All right, so welcome back, or welcome everyone to our second workshop of Health Data Working Group. My name is Aya Mitani, and I'm delighted to have Larry Dong today, who will be introducing us to the world of GitHub. Larry is a second-year PhD student in biostatistics at DLSBH and is working on causal inference and Bayesian methods. Just this past summer, he was a student at Google Summer of Code, where he was working on developing a Python package for Bayesian statistical modeling. So his coding skills are outstanding. And Larry has also recently been appointed as a GitHub campus expert. So he is truly the best person to be giving this workshop today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Larry. And yes, Larry, I think you can share your screen and everything. Great.
Sorry, I was still muted. Wow, thank you. Thank you very much for that introduction. So yeah, just wanted to welcome everybody to the workshop. We'll get started right away. So I think a few things here. So I'm gonna be presenting kind of like this. So I'll have my terminal on one side, and I'll have my slides on the other. So just I can code and kind of browse the web simultaneously. A little bit of multitasking going on. But yeah, I wanted to give you guys a warm welcome to our second workshop. This is the workshop on introduction to Git and GitHub. So like as we were saying, I'm Larry. You can my GitHub tag is Larry Shamalama, and I've been happy to be appointed as GitHub campus expert. The overall goal of this program is that we'll be giving a series of tutorials for you guys, and yeah, that's really it. Just to bring teach a little bit of GitHub to our students, and just some special thanks for people who gave these slides and who I saw, yeah, for these slides especially. But overall, welcome to our second workshop of the Health Data Working Group. So I believe, Kwan shared the slides in the chat, but they're available on this website, so you can have them, so you can follow along. You can follow along as I go through the slides. And this is our website, so you can see if you click on either on workshops, you'll see introduction to GitHub, and the slides should be available under slides right here. And there's also and you can see as a precursor for our upcoming workshop in November. Before jumping in, so maybe some few cool things I wanted to share. So I think the first thing that I think is very cool is there's something called a GitHub Student Developer Pack. So you can just Google the term GitHub Student Developer Pack, and it's a freely available, I guess, set of tools that are available to all students. So there's a lot of nice things that are free. I think PyCharm Pro is available there. GitKraken is available there. Some Google Cloud Computing resources are available, so do check them out. You also get GitHub. Your GitHub will be deemed pro, so you get unlimited private repositories. So something cool. Definitely, all you have to do is say I'm a student, and you'll be able to get this student developer pack. And another really cool thing that is part of GitHub. So this is all before jumping into, I guess, a bit more technical content. It is something called GitHub Pages. So GitHub Pages is, so once you create your GitHub accounts, so you have your account. I can maybe go, I'm on the terminal. I can go on Chrome. I can show you my account. So this would be, for instance, my GitHub account. So if I just quickly go in full screen, but GitHub Pages, what it allows is that you can host your own personal website through your GitHub account. And it's a very specific repository that will allow you to freely host your own static website. So I think it's quite nice. So going back to the slides, I think it's a nice tool, especially for students who are a bit more in the research in the academic world. It's a nice way to have people to, it's where you'd have some sort of landing page for people to browse your ongoing and previous work. There's a lot to say about this, so I can give a whole other workshop if there is interest about it. But yeah, just wanted to mention it. And yeah, this is my current page, so you can browse it at, and the default URL will be your GitHub username. So for me, it's larryshamalama.github.io. Yeah. And as we launch, there's a few things I want you guys to have. I would like you guys to have your Git installed. So I'll actually briefly talk about how to install Git. And I believe, well, it's been a while since I have this computer, but I feel like for some of the newer computers, it will be installed by default, but I'm not exactly sure about that. But the next thing, you can create a GitHub account. All you need is an email and your favorite coding ID. So a coding ID could be it's just some sort of interface where you can code. Terminal is also fine, but it could be a little bit more complicated. You can use things like Atom, Visual Studio Code. And I think one that maybe a lot of you guys use is RStudio for R. So just have some of these open so we can get started with the workshop. And I'll be doing some demos for you guys. And maybe before we carry on with the installation, maybe just a quick comment about the workshop. This is a very introductory workshop. So the idea for people who are a bit more familiar with Git and GitHub, I'll be talking a lot about like git add, commit, pull, push, and some of these commands, but I won't be talking about merging, branching issues, things that are a little bit more on the collaborative side of GitHub just yet. So that'll be for the next workshop. I really wanted to keep it basic for today. So if you guys are already using GitHub for your own version control purposes, this may be, a lot of this content may be already familiar for you. Yeah, just wanted to mention that as we go on. So the first thing on Windows, so you can open command prompt. So it's onto my left, this is, so you can see I have Mac, but this terminal is on the Mac, and the Windows version is command prompt. So you can have a look if Git installed by typing Git version. If you get some sort of error, Git is not installed, and you can visit the following website. I believe all you need to do is type Windows install Git, and you'll be directed to this website. And I think, and last I checked, the default app that it will install is something called Git Bash. So it's an app on your a program on your Windows, and through that you can have the same sort of command line that I'm showing on my left on Windows. And the minor note is, although command prompt and terminal look a lot alike, they are different. The scripting languages are a little bit different. And on the Mac, so if you're using a Mac, or I believe Linux, they both are Unix OSs, so I believe these should work as well. So if you want to have a look on your Mac, so you can open your terminal. So if you go on your Spotlight search, type terminal, you open up the terminal window that I have open on my left. So if you type Git version, you should be able to see what version you have. I'm not so familiar with the current state of the Git versions, but it's just to show that you have Git installed. And if it's not installed, you can use Homebrew. So brew install Git. So Homebrew is a nice package managing thing for Mac OS, and I believe also works for Linux and whatnot. But if you're the typo here, if brew is not installed on Git, you can visit. You can just type Homebrew on Google, and it will link you to this nice website, and you would see this nice command that you can copy by just clicking this small button, and you can paste it in your terminal, and you should be able to install Homebrew, after which you can install Git. Okay, so hopefully this is so far so good. My guess is that for most of you, Git is already installed, so I'll be carrying forward. And like I said, I hope that you guys have your GitHub account ready to go. And some quick bash commands is because I included this slide because, well, I do have terminal on my left. So maybe just some things that I'll be saying that I'll be using. So I like to use these 3 commands amongst a lot, but I don't want to overwhelm you guys with too many bash commands. The first one is pwd. So just overall bash and using the terminal. So sort of anything that can be done. For instance, if I want to go to Finder, so right now I'm opening I'm opening my Finder. As you can see, for instance, I can go to my documents folder and whatnot. This is nothing too new, but I can do this as well on the terminal. So for instance, if I click pwd, so that's my print work directory. So this is my work directory. I have a specific folder for GitHub. If I want to change directories, for instance, I want to go to documents, I can type cd and 2 dots. And if I pwd as well, that works. And if I want to go back to GitHub, my GitHub folder, I can type cd GitHub. And this will be sort of important as we create repositories and navigate through them. ls and lsa-a is just to list files. So for instance, if I click ls, I can see what I have here, and these are effectively all my GitHub repositories that I'm currently working on right now. Yeah, so just some quick bash commands just to show you. And like I said, so I will be using the terminal for this tutorial on the left, but there are other ways that you can use GitHub. I think my preference is terminal. Well, a little bit biased, I think that's the way I learned. But there's some few other ways that you can do so. So you can also use GitHub through RStudio, which I have some slides right afterwards. But you can use it directly from your browser. So if I go full screen onto my GitHub landing page, for instance, if I go to one of my favorite repositories, there will be an option, for instance, this is the README, and there will be an option just to edit it. And if I scroll down, I can commit the changes right away. It's definitely, I would recommend against it. Oop, let me just go back. Yeah. So I would sort of recommend it against it. The reason is, I think it's a bit more efficient if you want to modify many files at once. And I think on the terminal, you'll see you have a little bit more control over what you're doing. So that'll be my preference. You can use it on RStudio, like I said. There's also some other desktop applications such as GitHub Desktop and GitKraken, which are available from your student developer pack. But they're nice, but I won't be using them today. So in RStudio, for those who are a bit more familiar with R, I think R is one of the most common tools that we use in our department for research or for our courses. So you open RStudio and you click and you go under File, your new project. And so you see that you can create a project under version control. And if you click version control, then you have, you can clone a project or whatnot, so you can get started with Git right away. So you can, and in RStudio, you can also, you can make all your commits as well. But like I said, I'll be using the terminal on the left side. Okay, so the workshop outline, yeah, feel free to ask questions as we go. I'm happy to interact with you guys who are here. So like I said, we'll be really going to the fundamentals of Git and GitHub. I'll be showing you some brief commands, and I'll be doing some sort of the demo, like I said, on the left. And at the end, I'll be just saying a few words about what is available and I guess what we call the GitHub universe, and a little bit about the open source community and why it's something that I personally think is very exciting and something that I'd like to promote to you guys. But definitely, let's focus on the two first things for now. So going forward, so actually, what is Git? So Git, I think by definition, as we can see, is a distributed version control system. So we just want to have some convenient way to do version control of our code. So for instance, if we have some sort of like our first preliminary analysis, then we want to take, for instance, a snapshot of our code at that time. And we say by our code, we can have multiple files. So I think that's what you often see represented as a single dot or node. And for instance, later on, you're running your analysis and some reviewer, reviewer 2 wants you to add another analysis. Well, then you would maybe edit your code, and then you would have maybe a second snapshot, for instance. And at that point, what's nice with GitHub is that you can not only revisit your previous version of your assemble of code, or what we call repository, but you can also see the changes in the changes that you made in your code, and it would highlight in each file what has been modified. And in any Git project, you see the .git folder. So for instance, if I go back to my terminal and I go to any of my folders, so I think a nice one, this is the one that I've been working more recently on, so pymc-playground. So I'm just going to that directory. And if I write, for instance, ls, so ls, remember, is just to list the contents in the directory. this is a Git folder, but I don't. This is a repository, but I don't see the .git folder, and I think this is a nice way that I want to highlight the ls.a is because anything that begins with a dot is not shown with just the regular ls command. So you can see that effectively there's the .git folder, and we can even go into it and see and have a look at its contents. And there's a lot of details that I don't want to get into too much, but it has it tracks your history and all of your commits. Yeah, so maybe let's get out of this directory and go back into our GitHub directory as follows. Yeah. So I guess this is sort of the definition of Git. And I think something worth mentioning is that Git, I guess we can say, is a tool, and GitHub is a platform. But there are other platforms that use Git. Obviously, as a GitHub campus expert with some resources on GitHub, and with my past experience, I've only been using GitHub, so I'll be only talking about GitHub. But if you use, for instance, tools called GitLab, and if you go into a bit more tech or data-oriented company, you probably have your own internal Git version control system that probably uses very similar Git commands as well, that I know nothing about, right? Because we're but yeah, so what is GitHub? GitHub is a website, and you can create repositories, public or private. So your public repositories will be made available to other people, and your private repository is just for yourself and your collaborators. I think I wrote a minor comment on GitHub. If you want to just push anything to your GitHub, that's usually what I do. You got to be careful if you, for instance, if you have larger data sets, you can only upload files up to 100 megabytes. And the main uses of version control. So you can track, as I said, the history of your changes. So which files has changed, what exactly has changed within those files, who made those changes. So like I said, today we'll be only focusing on if you yourself were working on Git just as a backup, and when these changes occurred. So maybe a few months ago, years ago. It's a nice way to just track the history. Like I said, if you're using it for yourself or as for collaborative work, you can use it. It can serve as backup. So one thing that I like to use is whenever I code, I always want to have a backup on my GitHub, just in case, I guess, of anything. But I think another nice reason for backup and just to have everything stored on GitHub is, for instance, if you want to use maybe something called a supercomputer, and you can just have your GitHub as like sort of the cloud, and you can communicate with your local computer, your laptop, your desktop, and then go log into the cloud to revisit your files. And for any collaborative work, it's really nice. It's very convenient through GitHub. It's a little bit adds a layer of complexity, but it's nice to collaborate with other people to see their to work on projects simultaneously. I used the word repository, I think, a few times, but what exactly is a repository? So like I said, it's like an ensemble of all of your code. I guess the definition we have here is a container that houses your project and its history. So we'll have the .git folder, but it'll also have everything else that you put in. So if you put in data, we'll have your data. If you have, I don't know, all your codes, your R scripts, your Python scripts and whatnot. And you can also have folders within your repository as well. And your repositories can be local or remote. So for instance, coming back to my left, so I like to always write ls just to make sure I know where I am. If I go to, for instance, my PyMC playground, so this is where I do all of my work, my follow-up on my summer of code work. So this is, for instance, doing ls.a-a. This is my local repository. So this is a kind of a copy or what I'm currently working on my computer. So then I can, then I can work on this. But if I visit my GitHub, I'm going to full screen. I think I linked it over here, and this is my remote repository. So you can see the, you can see that the folders over here bear very strong resemblance to what I have on the left. So this is the remote version of the repository, and to my left, I'm just visiting my local repository. And then how I'm going to interact with the remote is kind of the remote will serve as a backup, and we'll get into that just now. So now that we hopefully that you guys have created your your GitHub page. So you can customize it. So one nice thing is that there is there's a specific repository called, well, it depends on your username. So my repository would be Larry Shamalama, and you can add a small introduction that will appear right at your landing page. So a nice thing about GitHub and having this kind of profile is that it can serve as a landing page if you want to showcase your ongoing programming or coding work, and all these green squares just showcase your commits. So let's create our first repository. And for that, if you log in, you can go under repository, and I'll do that with you guys. So hopefully, if you guys want to follow along, you're more than welcome to. So going back to full screen. So right now I was in my PyMC Playground repository. So if I go into repository over here, and you guys should all have this button, you can click the new, and you'll see there's a few other options. So for instance, I guess you are the owner, and let's create a repository name. So I'll just say GitHub tutorial. I'll maybe give the date of today, as why not. You can have redundant repository names. I think that's normal. And then you can have something called, and then you can choose it to be public or private. So if I click private, as I create this repository, it won't be made available to all of you guys, but I will write public. And these are other small details. The README file is just as a file that can, so when people land on your repository, they can have just a brief description of it. The Git and the ignore and license, I don't want to get into too much detail, but maybe it's a minor comment about the license is that although things are open source, you can claim copyright to your code, and it tells exactly what you can or cannot do with the code, with your code. I'm not as familiar with licensing, I must say, but if you want to have a more of a larger scale project, that's definitely important. So not clicking create repository, and as we probably guess, it's empty. And you can follow this, what we're seeing over here, just to add a little bit, add a few things to our, just to add maybe something to our repository. But one thing that I will do is I will go to the URL as like on the top of the screen. I can click, I will copy it. Now go back to my terminal. And where am I? I'm over here. And I'll go to the folder that I want to have the repository for working purposes. And I'll click pwd just to make sure that I am in my GitHub folder. This is where I want to work. And I'll type git clone. Git clone. So git is just saying that you're using git, and cloning is I want to copy the repository that I just created. And we can see it says warning and cloning into empty repository. And let's type ls to see if it's there. Aha, I see GitHub tutorial oct25. And there you go. So why did I want to clone it? Is because if I type ls, you can see it's empty. I don't get anything. But if I type ls-a, I have my .git folder within. So right now, I know exactly if I want to push my codes to GitHub, it knows where exactly to push it. I see that there's a quick question. Does Git come with script notepad or do you usually work with terminal? So for Git commands, you can use in RStudio. I'm not familiar with SAS, but these commands you do use it in I guess terminal or in Git bash, to my understanding. R is installed. Yeah, you can directly initiate with the R terminal, but there should be some sort of terminal-like interface for you to type in your commands. Yeah. Do let me know if you guys have other questions. Yeah. So moving on, another command that I like to do for my terminal is called clear. So you can see all this history, and whoop, it's all wiped out. Although I can scroll up, but yeah, just to clear things. And what exactly are commits? So when I was talking about the history, I was saying, remember, each node you can think of it as a snapshot. So each commit effectively is a snapshot of its current state. So for instance, I put the example later on. For instance, I'm writing a grocery list, and it's not any sophisticated code, but if I want to have it, let's say a text file, if I write, for instance, add oranges and I commit that, then this first circle would represent that I added oranges to my grocery list. And then I want to add apples, and this would be, for instance, and add apples. So these are effectively snapshots, as I said. And how it's going to work is that you have to first write git add to say which files you want to add and you want to package up into your commit. So going back to the circle, so for instance, within the circle, you could have made modifications to many files. So for instance, let's say you have a couple of scripts, and that can serve as a single commit. So you will add that with git add. You can do git add many things and then commit. So you can see that the command is git commit -m. The -m means you need to add a message, and it needs to be quotation marks. And ideally, I like to say that maybe just a quick comment about the message that you want to add in quotation marks. Maybe ideally something a little bit informative, just to make sure that I think it's like naming your variables. You want to make sure that your variables make sense and you don't write hello world every time. So maybe let's try to do that just now. If we're going on. So I will be going to my RStudio. I think it will take the full screen. Let me shrink things a little bit. Okay, so like I will create, let's say, a new file in our script. And what is our favorite command? Maybe let's write something very, very simple. Let's initialize y, for instance, and then let's print hello world. Hello world with D. No typos yet. Okay, and let's save this file into our repository. So hopefully you guys can still see on my screen. I have it under documents, under GitHub tutorial, and let's give this a name. So script.r. Maybe I don't have to put the extension, right? Okay, so I save this into my local repository. Is it going to appear online yet? It won't, because this is just, like I said, locally. So if I go to my terminal, and so am I in the right folder? I can maybe do a pwd. So effectively, I am in my GitHub tutorial -awk25. And if I type ls, what are we expected to see? Are we expected to see the .git folder? Not if I write -a. Are we expected to see the file that I just added? We should be able to see script.r. Exactly. So now if I do want to commit, if I do want to start thinking about making my commit, so for instance, I will type a command that I'll get into in a second called git status. I can see what is currently going on. So right now, the script.r is in red. So right now, nothing is tracked. So nothing is keeping track of this. And as Git is saying, nothing is committed. But if you want to, you need to make your commit. So I will do git add and my script.r. Maybe a small thing that I think is cool is that if you're on terminal, you can just press tab and it will autocomplete. I'll do git add script. Now, if I do git status, what do we expect? So we effectively added it to be commit to our commit. So you can see that, well, it's changes to be made to be committed. We haven't made the commit yet, so let's make our commit. So git commit -m, and let's say initialized our first script. Yeah, and you can see that we have made our first commit. If I write git status, so nothing is kept track yet because our commit is already there. Is this online yet? It's not, because we made a commit, but we haven't, what we say is pushed to the web. So, but it's already in our commits. And I think, so now I'm going back to my slides. I think a nice diagram that I like to see, that I like to show people is you have your working directory, and this is all under local. You will have to first add to what we call the staging area. And this is what changes and what files you want to be bundled up into a commit, and then you bundle them up into your commits, which is what we did, and then you can push it. Then we can do a second commit real soon. And all these other functions, I'll talk about them later. So we made the commit, and I said, oh, I jumped the gun on my slides a little bit. So we can type git status to see our current changes. And we can also type git log. So git log, you should be able to see what commits you've done. How many commits have you made so far? We've made just one. And you can see our message, which is initialize our first script. It was made when, it was made by whom? It was made by me. And one thing I want to draw your attention to is every commit will have its unique set of numbers and letters. And I think this is really important, is that that's how you can identify your commit. And we can see when we start doing version control, this will be important. Yeah, so just as a quick recap, the one command here that I didn't talk about is git init, is that if you have a repository without the .git folders, you can write git init and tell which is where you want to be pushing it, so kind of like the address. But I cloned a empty repository with the .git folder, so I didn't have to do that. And git status, git log, git add, and commit. But the main thing is I want you guys to know that if you want to make commits, you need to git add, then git commit. Okay, and for instance, let's maybe make a few more commits. So for instance, I'll talk about, I think I'm in a slide about this. If I do want to push it to the web, I need to write git push. And this should work. And it will be it will go to the web. And for those who are following along, you might have to create a password, what's it called? An encryption key or something like that for you to push your stuff. And this is something that's new to GitHub just now. But I just want to quickly push, and just to show you guys that if I go over here, this was so I haven't reloaded my repository, but if I refresh this, then I have my script over here. And if we click it, then we can see what I just wrote. And like I said, I can edit this file directly on the browser, but I won't do that. But maybe I can do a quick example later on. Okay. Cool. Let me jump back a few slides. Taking a look. Yeah. And another thing that is interesting, so even if you don't push, you can still continue on with what I want to try now, is the git reset. So let's say let's go back to R, and I want to make a modification to this script. So let's say print hello world, print, this is, for instance, my second commit. Sorry, this is my second commit. And so if I save this and I type git status, what am I going to see? I'm going to see that I modified the script, right? And let's say I want to add another file. I want to add a README. So you see a README. I'll get into, yeah. So it is a markdown file where you can see some instructions about your repository. So I'll directly write it as a markdown file. I'll say like GitHub tutorial README. I'll say hello everybody. I'll save it. And it's important for READMEs, they have to be called README in capital letters .md. And I'll save it in the same folder. I'll just say use MD. Yeah. Because I think in R, they really like you to use R or R markdowns, but yeah, we're being a bit rebellious. We're trying to use a markdown file. So if I type git status, what am I going to see now? So I modified the script.r previously. Did I do anything to it? Did I do git add? I didn't do git add yet. So if I type git status, I will be expected to see the script.r that's still modified. And if I type, and what else did I add? I added a README. So now if I type git status, I should be able to see that I have first modified the script, but it is, I guess the difference is that I don't have the README uploaded yet on my repository, but I have my script uploaded, but just modified now. Okay, so let's add them. So a convenient, so what you can do is you can do git add script and you press enter, git add readme, press enter, and you add both. But a nice way that I like to do is you can do git add dot, and this way you'll be adding all of your modified files. You would be saying, I want you to track all my changes. And if I type git status, you can see everything should be green. And I'll make my commit. This is my, oh, I think I wrote that already. Second commit. Okay, and then I can push it later on. I can do git push. And you can see that I pushed it to the web. And I think where git reset comes in handy is if I type git log and I want to undo this commit, I can do git reset and I can paste, for instance, this the commit over here, and things should be reset, right? And I'm back to where I was previously. Yeah. Okay. Just moving forward. Yeah, but I don't want to focus too much on this git reset thing. So moving forward. So I didn't talk. I just showed you this command called git push, and I want to come back to this part. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from this tutorial is that if you want to have your stuff uploaded to the web from your local computer, I want you to do git add, git commit, git push. So add, commit, push. That's, if there's one thing I want you to remember, this is really it. And focusing, and oh, this is a nice nice cartoon that I kind of said. It's like if I'm adding is just saying what you want it to be packaged, and then pushing is actually once everything's wrapped up from your commit, and you're actually pushing it to the web. But if I want to download or update these repositories, there's a few commands that I want to show you guys. So the git clone, we actually already used it to clone this the empty repository. Git pull will be to grab changes that are already on the new repository. So for instance, if I go to my repository over here, I can see that I have both my commits done, right? But over here, what commits do I have? If I write git log, I only have a single commit. So I should be able to do git pull. Oh, this is the interesting with Git is that there's often a lot of these changes. So I did something a little bit weird here. I don't want to. I can maybe talk a bit about what is this error. So maybe if I go back to the slides over here. So this error that I'm saying is I want to pull what the current state of my repository, but I've locally modified my script and my README. The thing is, the second commit that we made corresponds exactly to our modifications over here, but Git is not telling us that, because I think Git wants to be a little bit more general. And when you want to update your files that you've modified with other modifications, so there's two sets of modifications, and when Git does not know which one to prioritize, this is what we call a conflict, and this is what's happening over here. And then you'll see aborting, and that's where you start debugging Git, which can be and that's definitely not easy. So I think an easy way to solve this, and this is where I'm always happy to help you guys, and it's a bit nicer if things were in person because there's all sorts of errors that can happen. I think if I type git stash, everything should be fine. Let me just, oh no. I'm going a little bit quickly. I should be okay. Oh no. How do I just remove all my changes? So let's maybe manually delete our README. So git stashes, I'm putting away my current changes. So for instance, the RM would be removing the README. I just manually remove it. Okay, oh, that's fine. And if I type git pull, everything should be fine, I'm guessing. There you go. So right now, if I go into my log, I should be able to see my second commit that I made previously, and even after I did my reset. So yeah, maybe just revisiting some of the commands that I did very quickly. I did it quickly just to make sure everything's fine. So git pull, I know that I only have my single commit right now in my .git folder, but on the web I have 2 commits. So I wanted the second commit to be done over here. There was a slight conflict, which is what happened, but I was still able to pull after. Either you can manually delete it, but that can always be confusing if because we didn't make that many changes to our README right now. But in case we and yeah, I'll talk about how to solve merge conflicts more specifically in some upcoming tutorial. But over here, I manually deleted the README, and it worked quite well. So that's git pull, git push. And the last command is git remote -v. I like to have the -v argument because you'll be able to tell exactly where you are pushing and fetching from, and subsequently pulling as well. You're pulling from your origin. There's going to be a difference between origin and upstream, because an upstream is, for instance, if you're using somebody else's code, but you also want to have the same replica of your own, so you have a difference between origin and upstream. But right now we're just doing version control with ourselves, so we have just an origin, and git remote would effectively allow you just to check that. Oh, that's a really good question. So what's the difference between git pull and git fetch? So this is actually new to me. So pulling so like I said, you will be able to pull any changes that have been done. And fetching, I believe what it does is that it just check if there are changes. So kind of like seeing if there have been done, if changes have been done. But polling actually just tries to pull. And I believe you should be, if there are any potential merge conflicts, I believe that git fetch should be able to show you these conflicts. So as I'm answering this question, it's a really good question. There's a very slight discrepancy between them. I've rarely used git fetch in my personal use when I'm using GitHub. But yeah, definitely, yeah, there's a very slight discrepancy between them. I think git fetch becomes more handy when you're doing working on a larger scale project, and yeah. So one quick thing, if for those who are following along, that I have been doing something. I've been doing git push. So for instance, let's maybe do a third commit. So if I do git log, I effectively have my second commit in place. Let's maybe say print, this is my third commit. Put a smiley face this time. And I'll save this, right? I think a good habit is to check our git status. I modified the script. I'll add it, now going a little bit faster. Commit -m. Third commit is ready, trying to be a little bit more, have a little more diversity in my messages. And I'll type git push. So just wanted to replicate the entire process. Like I said, git add, commit, push, pushing, it'll work. But for you guys, if you're trying git push at home, it may not work just yet. And the reason is recently GitHub has, so if I scroll back to the slide, recently GitHub, before to push, all you needed was your GitHub password. But right now we want something called a personal access token. So how can you create one? So this is brand new. So going back to my GitHub, if I go to GitHub, it'll be under settings. We can create one just right now. Go under developer settings, and it'll be under personal access token. So developer settings is all the way down over here. Personal access tokens, and I have one right here. So for instance, if I delete it, let's see what's going to happen. So I don't have any personal access tokens yet. So let's maybe make another modification or commit. And often what happens, you have many commits of like going after one another, and you have some darker gray squares on your portfolio. So just check git status. You don't have to write git status every time. And let's maybe make a commit or commit. And if I type git push, what's going to happen? So I don't have any personal access tokens. I should be receiving an error because I don't have these tokens. So this is where I would do, and that's why these tokens are important. I have to generate a new token. This is, thankfully, GitHub is blurring my password. And let's create a write tutorial. And you can choose the expiration date. So I think the main thing you want to click here is repo, because this will allow you to just push, pull, and whatnot. I like to click this one in case I'm working on a large scale project, but for our purposes, just to update your repository, just click this and you can generate token. Now this is top secret, don't write this down, but I'll delete it, it's okay. It'll generate an automatic token, as we're saying. Make sure you copy it and you won't be seeing it again. So you can click this to copy it. Now let's try git push again. It'll ask for username. Does it realize, well, I just created a personal access token, and the password over here, you need to copy paste your token. So it's not, so I copy pasted it right now. It won't show, but it knows it's there and it should work now because I have this personal access token. If I refresh this page, it's no longer there, but it says that I created one. Okay, so hopefully that was clear. So this is quite new. So even for people who are familiar with GitHub, this is a fairly new concept. Okay, so as I'm going forward, I don't know if anybody has any questions so far. I think this was the most of it. So really, if you want to do version control, the add, commit, push, I think is really you can't really go wrong with that. And yeah, and like a small comment on readmes. So for instance, if I go to my repository, going back to full screen, to the repo that I just created, if I go on the repositories, so you can see that you see all these scripts, but you see the README very well. So the README right here is just if you have something, for instance, your own code, or if you want other people to have a look at it, you should. If you want to give instructions, the README would come in handy. And what the README is doing, oops, it's always going back, is that you can put details about installation instructions. You can put some license information, like I said, if it's a larger scale project, but especially how to use your code. I think that's a really nice thing to have a few instructions on how to use your code if you're, for instance, doing research, or if you want to write a package for other people to use your method. And this aligns well with, with something that I think is really important, just having reproducible research. This is more from a research perspective. Reproducibility is something that's I guess very important. And with GitHub, you can push your code for other people to see. So make sure you have some instructions in your README. And I believe Aya would be giving a nice tutorial next month about this, but more to come later on. And yeah, it will appear on your repository page. So in summary, the long story short, GitHub has a lot of nice functionalities, but today I really wanted to focus on add, commit, push. And I emphasize on this dot, if you want GitHub to track all your modifications, I want you to git add, git commit, some message that's relatively meaningful, and git push. Everything else, I don't want to say secondary because it's also important, but add, commit, push is the most important one. Yeah. And just a few more things about what can be done with GitHub. So the first thing, as I said, so GitHub right now has something called GitHub Education. So there's a lot of nice resources for those who are still in school, like most of us. So there's a student developer pack. There's something called Campus Advisors. I think this is where professors get a few resources, and there's something called GitHub Classroom. But the last thing is GitHub Campus Experts, where people like me would try to disseminate workshops like these to an audience. And like I said, a follow-up one on how to do branching issues and pull requests will come up. And another thing, something called open sourcing. So open sourcing is a movement that I've been happy to be part of in the summer. And it's where, for instance, a lot of our, so I think the subsequent slide is nice. There's a lot of our nicer packages. I think for people who are familiar with R, Tidyverse, I think our last, throwing back to our last workshop, ggplot, these are all open source packages in the sense that what's going on really behind the scenes of, for instance, in plotting with ggplot, you can see all of their code should be available. It's probably hard to understand, but it's made available online. And a lot of these projects are available on GitHub, or some, they should be all available on GitHub, and including one of which, this is, I think, an initiative by our very own, so the COVID-19 Canada Open Data Working Group is also available on GitHub as well. And scrolling back, there's a lot of other communities that are available that are also on GitHub. R-Ladies, PyLadies, Major League Hacking, amongst many. And these are just communities that try to foster, to give tutorials, kind of similar to this one, but more specific to what they're using. And just a nice community for people to learn and to hang out, hopefully in person soon. But I'm happy to be part. I try to be a little bit involved, and I think it's nice. It's a nice like ecosystem to try to learn things a little bit by osmosis as well. And there's also events. There's something called 24 Pull Requests. I actually don't know this. Hacktoberfest is something that's going on now. So for people who are more interested in contributing to open source, you can, if you have 4 pull requests that are merged, so a little bit about pull requests, if you want to contribute to any public repository, you can do so, but you probably don't have permissions just yet. And you can do so by submitting a pull request. And what pull requests do, you can find the current state, the current snapshot of the public repository, and add whatever you want to it, any modifications, and somebody who is in charge of the repository can approve it. And once these pull requests are approved, it will be merged into the code. So Hacktoberfest, if you have 4 pull requests that are merged, you get some free swag, some free t-shirt and stickers and whatnot. And lastly, there's something called a GitHub Field Day. So I think that kind of sums up the workshop for today. So like I said, this is the introductory and hopefully the first of 2 or 3 total workshops for the school year. So if you have any suggestions or feedback, I know that it's not always easy to teach this kind of highly technical thing remotely. So hopefully a very specific reason why I left out collaboration to the next semester in case we can do that in person. It's always nice to have people beside us that we can do our pull requests really side by side from our computers. I think that's a lot of fun. That's how I learned how to do pull requests. So hopefully that can happen next semester. But otherwise, in general, if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask me. If you have any feedback on how I presented this, you can let me know. But this is for you guys. It's and hopefully this was helpful. And for next time, a lot more on branching issues, pull requests, and whatnot. Yeah. So I think I've gone through most of my slides. If anybody has any questions, you're welcome to ask.
Great, thank you, Larry. If anybody has a question, please put it in the chat, but you're also welcome to unmute yourself and ask your question directly to Larry. Some clapping hands.
Cool, thanks. Oh, I don't know this ID. Let me have a look.
So Osvaldo just posted just a suggestion for IDE. And
wow.
Larry is opening that link.
Yeah, I don't know this. It looks pretty cool. Thanks for sharing, Osvaldo.
Hey Larry, thanks for the workshop. Just a quick question. To those who are really new to GitHub, like myself, using Bash and Terminal might be a bit intimidating. But I know, like any coding language, it's probably a good starting point for later on. But how would you relate maybe learning things through Bash versus using GitHub Desktop when you're starting off? Because a lot of these pull and push requests can also be done in desktop, but like, will it help in the long run, or that's my question.
I think it's a good point. So I think it's a really good point. If you really want to just do version control for yourself, I think all these desktop apps would work really well, probably be sufficient. I don't have a lot of experience with them actually. But but if you want to do anything on the collaborative end, I would probably suggest these desktop apps would also work. But I think that's where having a bit more control and with these commands would work well. So this is, I guess, more of a starting point to using these kind of commands. But in general, I think, yeah, these desktop apps would probably be okay for most people who are using GitHub. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Anyone else? Okay.
Not.
Just want to say great job, Larry. Yeah, I think it was a nice walkout through, with the basics, which, can be a bit daunting, especially if you're not familiar with it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thanks as well, though.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. All right, if no more questions, so this session was recorded, so it will be posted on our website. So you can always go back to it and follow Larry along if you're trying to create your first repository and whatnot. All right, I think that's it for this week.
Yeah. Oh, well, thanks to you, Rachel. So for November, you can maybe say a quick.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So next month, we'll have our last workshop of the semester, and it will be on forget the exact title. Reproducible research. Yeah, best practices for reproducible research or something like that. And I'll be talking about some tips and resources to make your research more reproducible. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody.